Howard Stone, welcome to the Partnering Leadership Podcast.
Thank you, Mahan. I'm pleased and humbled to be here.
You have been a wonderful example of leadership in this entire region, most especially in Prince George's County, and can't wait to find out a little bit about your leadership journey. Now, you are a native to Washington, D.C., and I'm just curious how your upbringing, Howard, impacted the kind of leader you have become.
Well, Mahan, I'm not only a native, I'm one of those rare breeds. I'm a third generation Washingtonian, and we're very far and few between. But I learned a lot from my family, especially my parents, and what I really learned, Mahan, was to those who have been given much, much is required. And I guess that's been a tenet that I've lived by, and that has always been the thing that keeps me going in public service and the work that I do with nonprofits, because I feel that this is a rent that I have to pay for living in earth, and God has richly blessed me, not necessarily financially, but He's allowed me to experience some wonderful things. I've been, in the presence of very powerful people. I have been able to travel throughout the world, and it's been just a fortune. And every morning I thank God for allowing me to be on this journey.
And you have lived up to those expectations of giving a lot to the community. Now, I understand partly because of your family business. Initially, you wanted to grow up and become a mortician.
Yes, Mahan. My family had a business in Washington, D.C. It was John T. Ryan's funeral home. And it was fortunate because when kids used to collect little postcards, I'd have postcards of the new models of caskets that were coming out. And not that I wanted to be on the embalming side of the business. I thought that I would be the one that could really, it's like you sell ice to the Eskimos, that I would be the one that would persuade people to spend elaborate sums of money for a homegoing or a funeral. And when I think back, God did not allow me to go in that business, because I could have wrecked some people's finances. And I could see myself, I'm a talker, Mahan. And, I'd say, your parent or your mama or your daddy would like that $20,000 or $30,000 coffin with all the frills. And I would have talked a lot of people into doing some things that they really can't afford to do. So it was fortunate I did not pursue that.
You are a wonderful salesperson for all the different causes you've advocated. Now, what took you to Rutgers to study political science?
It was interesting, Mahan. That was during the era that I guess through conscience, or it wasn't really integration, that some of our larger and more established white universities were encouraging Black students to enter. Now, I had laid out that I was going to go to Howard University. I had my parties all lined up for the year, and I just knew I was going to Howard. But my mother looked at me, she said, "I think you better think again." And Howard's good, and I love Howard University and all my friends that are Bisons. But they said, "I think you might do better." So of course that allowed, I think I applied to two schools, the University of Delaware and Rutgers. And Rutgers having a fantastic reputation, I said, okay, I'll go to Rutgers. But I did it begrudgingly, because I just knew that I was going to be here for Howard and the Howard homecoming. and all the festivities associated with that, but that didn't come to pass. So that led me to go on the banks of the Raritan. That's where Rutgers is located in New Brunswick, New Jersey. And I had 4 wonderful years, with one exception. My mother passed my senior year, and that was a defining moment in my life, because my mother and I were very, very, very close. When you saw my mother, you saw me, and you saw me, you saw my mother. And that is, like I said, it was a defining moment in my life, because while it took me a long time to deal with that, years later, I look back and I reflect, and I'm not crazy, Mahan, but I think my mother is still watching over me. And as our loved ones, when they depart this earth, they still watch over, and you get angels in heaven. And so I know that there's some things that I have done, and my mother has looked out. She is still looking out for me. And my mother has been dead some 40 years now, but that is what inspired me. And I also had an aunt that was school teacher for 40 years in Prince George's County. And she was a great role model. And that's when the education bug began, not only for mine, but making sure that these young people got at least their start and got a good education.
Yes, I know education has been a big part of something that you've been passionate about. I can tell you there is obviously an angel up in heaven that is really proud of you and the difference you've made on so many fronts, including education in Prince George's County. So what got you so engaged in Prince George's County, Howard?
Well, it was funny, Mahan. When I went to grad school at American University. I went to the School of School of Government and Public Administration. And I happened to have been a TA when I was in graduate schools. And one night, it was toward the end of my matriculation at American University. I was up at the campus, and I saw there was a job opportunities bulletin. And I looked at the job opportunities bulletin, and I took the information. I think I took the bulletin off the wall, and it said, they had an opening for an administrative assistant 1 working for the Prince George's County Council. So I said, I think I'm gonna apply for this job. I applied for the job. Then I got an interview. And I remember going down Pennsylvania Avenue, extended to Upper Marlboro. And I walked in, and there was a woman a fabulous woman who worked for one of the council members. And, I was sitting there fidgeting, and she said, "Listen, you're nervous, but you should not be nervous, because I think you are better than anybody else I've seen come in there for this interview. So don't be nervous, just be yourself." And my first boss was a guy named Ken Duncan. He was the council administrator, and he hired me, took me under his wing, and that began my journey and my saga in Prince George's County. And I started working for the county in 1976. And then I felt to have a true impact, I had to live where I worked. So I decided to move out of the District of Columbia I moved in 1977. And to tell you the truth, I haven't looked back.
And you've been very impactful. And in Prince George's County, you ended up getting to know a person by the name of Wayne Curry, that eventually became a magnificent county executive for Prince George's County.
Wayne, like I said, he befriended me, because at that time there were not that many people in Prince George's County that looked like either one of us. And it was an immediate connection, and Mahan, uh, Wayne was so instrumental in my life, that I listened to him. He was my advisor. He was also a critic, and of course, as people know, Wayne is no longer with us. He died in July 6 years ago of lung cancer, but he was the one who was really the person who made me what I am today. And I'll never forget, Mahan, when Wayne first got elected, I was the chief of staff. And I felt it was my job to bring in candidates so we could fill that CAO's position, the chief administrative officer. So, I would bring about 8 candidates in, and Wayne would interview him, but he said, "No, I don't like this person. I don't like the way this person looks. I don't like the socks he's wearing." Wayne would come up with some reason that he did not like the person. So one day we were talking. I said, "Well, Wayne, we've got to appoint a CAO." And he looked me in my eyes and said, "There's only one person that can be CAO." I said, "Well, who in the hell is that?" And he said, "You." And having grown through the ranks in Prince George's County, because I, worked for the council, then I went to the Hill to be legislative assistant for Steny Hoyer. I came back to the county. I was their cable administrator, and I sort of knew the government well, and it was true. And so he said, "No, I want you to be my CAO." And the thought of running this government, it was terrifying, but it was a challenge because we were coming in. Wayne was the first Black county executive. And I said, we got to keep these trains running on time, and we've got to do the work that we need to do for all the people in Prince George's County. Not just the Black people, but the whole realm of Prince George's County, which is a diverse county. And so it was my job to make sure the trains ran on time. There were no issues with any ethical problems or legal problems. And when Wayne Carey, when we came into the county government, we had a tremendous deficit. We had a $135 million deficit. We had to reorganize government. We had to right size it. We had to pass 26 pieces of legislation. We had to do a lot to deal with that deficit. And, in Wall Street, the analysts were looking at us saying, "Okay, what are you going to do?" Wayne went to Wall Street and he told them his plan, that he was going to reorganize government and do everything. And I think they doubted him. But after our first foray to Wall Street, I'll never forget the Washington magazine, the Sunday magazine and the Washington Post had a picture of Wayne, and the caption was, "He's not afraid." So he had the bold energy to lay out a plan, and my job was to execute that plan. And I can honestly say that Wayne regarded the county's finances as his own personal checkbook, and he was a very stingy person. And while we inherited a $135 million deficit, when Wayne left office, we left the county with a $142 million surplus.
Wow.
So that shows you the tenacity and the type of person that Wayne Carey was.
And the people like you that he surrounded himself with. Now, I know Howard, Wayne was also a big advocate for Leadership Greater Washington, which is an organization that has been close to your heart.
Yes,
And
yes, it was.
my understanding is you were a troublemaker when you got involved in Leadership Greater Washington.
Yes, Mahan, and I just want to say Wayne was in the exalted first class of Leadership Washington. I was in the class of 1996, and it was interesting. I came into the orientation, and about 10 minutes later, I looked and I said, "Okay, Howard, what have you gotten yourself into?" Because there were 55 people in my class, and I looked around and I said, "Oh boy, this is going to be interesting." And then I said, most of the people in Leadership Washington are Type A people. We are all Type A people. Get it done, do it now. I'm in charge. And I said, this will never work because everybody knows I'm always in charge. And these other people think they're in charge too. No, this is not going to work. But I drank the Kool-Aid. I started believing in the process, and it and that began my lifelong affair with this wonderful organization. And you mentioned what I did. We had our environmental day, and we went up to Great Falls. And I admit I have an attention deficit disorder. So after about 15 minutes of people telling us about the environment and the rocks and the water and everything else, I said, "Oh, I'll never survive this." So I told a couple of my classmates, I said, "There's a place up here. I think it's called the Old Anglers Inn, and we can sit out on the patio and drink beers. And while that's a place where the little ladies come with their gloves," I said, "but we're gonna be outside on the patio drinking beers." And they said, "Well, we need to go there." And so somehow I persuaded all the class and the bus to take us to the Old Anglers Inn. And we that's all we did the whole afternoon. And there's a person who has been very influential in my life. Her name is Artis, Hampshire-Cowan. And on our way back to the city, I got a call, and she said to me, "I want you in my office at 4:30 when you get back." And I said, "I don't feel like going to Howard, in all this traffic." And so I was there at 4:30, and she proceeded to read me the Riot Act. And believe me, Artis did that, Mahan. And Artis was in the third year. She was in 1989, I think, or was it the second year? I forget. But I ended up getting on the board of directors, and 4 years later, I became chair of this organization. And so the mark of a troublemaker is good. I don't say I'm a deliberate troublemaker, but I've learned to question some things. And it was just like our diversity day, which is always a problem in Leadership Greater Washington because you want people to show their true feelings. And in my year, we had two wonderful facilitators, but the class, we needed to bond ourselves. So I kindly asked the facilitators to leave. And they looked at me and I said, "No, we can't do this with you observing. You got to leave." They left, and we had our diversity day among ourselves. And, I just felt that we didn't need any interlopers. And so some people call me a troublemaker. But, I sort of stand on principle and some God-given insights or talents that I might have.
And you have used that for leadership, whether in Prince George's County, Leadership Greater Washington, and the entire region, Howard. Now, obviously, you've also been very committed to education all throughout your career, including Prince George's Community College, serving as chair of Board of Trustees. And at one point, you served on the appointed Board of Education or for
Right.
schools. And then you ran for an elected seat that you weren't able to get?
Yeah, I mean, that was what I call a defining moment in my life, because um, no one likes to be rejected. And I will, spent most of my adult life, I wanted to be loved universally. And I felt that was people telling me that we don't love you. But then when I got a chance to sit back and reflect upon, people had an issue with the idea of an appointed school board. They felt that given the democratic principles, that the school board it should be a democratically elected venue. And so that's really was because they didn't want to have anything to do with anybody that had served on the appointed board. So, I finally realized that, but it was a very humbling experience. And like I said, I was going, woe is me, woe is me. People don't love me. And I had to come to grips with that, and now I care what people think, but being loved is nice, but I don't want people to necessarily love me. I want people to respect me for what I have done and what I continue to do, as long as God allows me to live on this earth.
It's great advice for all leaders and all of us. And you are very well loved too, Howard. Now, who have been some of the people that you consider to have been most instrumental to your own leadership development and growth, Howard?
Well, of course, I say my parents were. I have an aunt that her name was Hester Henderson that was very instrumental. But I've met some people along the way. Certainly, Artis Hampshire-Cowan. There's one woman who is no longer with us, Susan Hager from Hager Sharp. And certainly my mentor, Wayne Curry. There have been people, and Ken Duncan, the council administrator. These are people that I learned from, and I'm going to tell you a little story, and I hope it's not too much. But when I started my first job was working as administrative assistant for the county council, and so I used to spend hours and stay late at night, and we had we call it a legislative officer, an attorney for the council. His name was Lionel Lockhart, and he was a true Prince George's good old boy. And we used to talk late into night about the history of Prince George's County, things that happened and everything. And one evening, Jim Lockhart looked at me and he said it just like this. He said, "Howard, you are good. You are a good colored fellow." And at first I sort of said, "Oh God." But, in his own way, he was of that era that, we were colored people. And in his own way, he was paying me a compliment. Did I take offense to it? No. But by him saying that to me, it told me that I had an impact on him and his views on what Black people were and how Black people operated and what they did. And when I came to Prince George's County, it wasn't a warm and fuzzy place. But, in this ensuing 40 years, it has become an urban, sophisticated, really diverse, but a majority county. And we've accomplished a lot, and we've done so many magnificent things. So, I'm proud to be a Prince Georgian. And that's why, McCunn, when a lot of people use PG, and I correct them on the spot. I said, I don't know what PG County is. Now, if you ask me, I live in Prince George's County, and I'm proud to be a proud Prince Georgian.
That is absolutely wonderful, Howard. Now, if you were to reflect on your leadership journey and give advice to a younger Howard and younger leaders that want to be as impactful as you've been throughout your career, whether in Prince George's County and the entire region, what advice would you give?
That's simple, Mahan. Um, there's a book, and it's not a big book. You can just, you can read it in about an hour. It's called All I Learned in Life I Learned in Kindergarten. And I used to keep the tenets. I still keep them. If we were at work, I keep them on my wall in my office. But those were the basic rules, the skills of socialization. Uh, when you go out in the world of wonder, you hold hands. Uh, warm cookies and milk are good for you. And you don't hit people. I mean, I don't remember each and every one, but that book helped me. And it's not it's not a big oratorical, it's not a treatise on anything, but it teaches you the basic demands of being a person, trying to be a good citizen, and doing the things you have to do. And as I'm approaching my retirement, I haven't decided when, but it's after 43, 45 years. That's sort of uppermost in my mind now, and people will tell me, Howard, you need to share your wisdom with others. And now it's my quest to deal with some of the young administrators that I see in the government and take them under my wing and try to tutor them. And it's impossible to give them everything, but when I see things go wrong, I'll say no, 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 no. And so that's why I say there'll be a lot of people in Prince George's County that might say, boy, I'll be glad when that old man is gone. Because I'm critical. I believe in a certain way things are done. I believe things need to be done professionally, ethically, and it pays off in the end.
Well, Howard Stone, I really appreciate the wisdom that you shared with the partnering leadership community, the leadership that you've shown in Prince George's County and in this entire region, and the example you have set for leaders to follow. Thank you so much for this conversation, Howard.
Well, Mahan, it has been a pleasure, Mr. Chair, because you have inherited a great organization, one that I dearly love, and you have been a fantastic chair, and not only a fantastic chair, but somebody I can call and if I have an issue, I'll call you and tell you. And you've been open and honest, and I just appreciate you. So it's a mutual admiration society, Mahan. But I appreciate spending this time with you, and I'm just humbled.
Much love back at you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much.